Hi, I'm Owen, the host of the Australian Finance Podcast. This podcast is proudly sponsored by BetaShares, one of the leading providers of ETFs here in Australia. Serving thousands of financial advisors and over 1 million investors, BetaShares manages tens of billions of dollars on behalf of investors right across the country. I'm proud to partner with BetaShares on the Australian Finance Podcast, Australia's premier financial podcast, because there is great alignment in the long-term philosophy shared by both businesses. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast. Tahli, welcome to this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Big step up from your usual haunt over on the Australian Retirement Podcast.
Yeah, pretty daunting.
Yeah,
we're slowly upgrading.
This is first class here on the Australian Finance Podcast. So, you're a new voice-ish. You've appeared once here on the show, I believe, with Gemma.
A few weeks ago now.
Yep. So I'll ask you to kind of reintroduce yourself for folks who haven't heard of you. You're a financial advisor here at Rask, so some people would definitely be familiar with you so far. But we've got a lot of questions for this week's show, and there's some great ones, from ETFs to starting a business to switching careers, and it's a financial advice question there at the end as well. So I would like to start with you. Just a little bit about your background. Why did you switch from kind of the fitness industry to finance?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'd be lying if I said I hadn't been asked this one a lot, because it's quite the contrast. I have actually had a couple of people say that it made sense to make that transition, which I was a little bit perplexed by. But essentially, I was in the fitness space for a number of years, and I loved it. Don't get me wrong, and I was super lucky with the roles that I got and the opportunities I had. But I just found that it wasn't quite filling my cup enough. I was able to scratch the surface, I guess, on helping business owners with their business finance, because I was working in kind of a business performance role. So I got to dip my toe in the water and explore that a little bit. But I just found that it was quite repetitive for me, and the problem-solving capacity wasn't large enough, and I was just getting, to be blunt, a little bit bored.
Yep.
And then COVID happened, and I spoke about this on the previous podcast, that I actually heard about financial planning for the first time by doing an online career quiz,
right.
which, who would have thought?
Yeah.
Usually those things are reserved for high school, and they don't end up with the best recommendations. But for me, it was a perfect suggestion. It was really like the perfect blend of working with numbers, which I've always loved, being able to problem solve, again, which I've always loved, but then combining that with the people and the relationship aspect. It was when I first read it, I was like, light bulb moment, this sounds brilliant. And then pretty much straight away started researching how to actually become a planner or an advisor. And then, it's quite a long pathway, I will say. You've got to do now there is a bachelor degree with a major in financial planning, which can get you into your professional year. But when I studied, I did my Bachelor of Business and then had to go into a graduate diploma of financial planning, and then, transition somehow from working in fitness to somehow landing a job in the finance space, which was not the easiest. But I can
imagine.
Pretty lucky. I had some great mentors along the way, and here we are today.
Yeah, cool. There is a question about transitioning careers to finance, so we'll talk a bit about that in a minute. Did you have anyone in your life that influenced you towards money? So I've got in my notes here, any money mentors. So people, or this could have been vicariously, so it could be like through books or podcasts or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a funny question. I had a little laugh to myself when I was reading this morning, because in terms of like childhood money mentors that I actually was interacting with, not the best.
Okay.
But I looked back this morning, and it was about 2019 that I read my first personal finances book. And it was Smashed Avocados by Nicole. And she was on the podcast last year.
Yeah, she was actually on at the time for Smashed Avo. We actually presented at an event years ago, actually, Nicole. Yeah, she's lovely.
No way.
Yeah, she's from here in Victoria.
That book honestly changed my life. And it's
she'd love to hear that.
It's total like eat, pray, love moment. Like I was taking a weekend getaway on my own in Byron, just like 2019, life is up in the air, didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And read that book in Byron and was just like mind blown.
Wow.
This all seems possible for the first time in my life. So that was a huge game changer, and it kind of led to listening to things like She's on the Money, which, again, game changer for me. Looking back in hindsight, all of that stuff and all of the content I was absorbing was super simple, but it was so relatable and accessible. And I think that's kind of informed the way I like to go about my own finance content or interactions now, with like trying to make it as relatable and accessible as possible. And I'm pretty lucky too, like 2 of my best friends are in the finance space, and they're absolute go-getters.
Shout out,
yeah, they're amazing. Every time I catch up with them, I'm just in awe of the things that they're doing. So,
cool.
Yeah,
look at this. 2019, expert guest Nicole Haddo smashed Avo.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so there you go. And
Massive
then the next thing is
fangirl.
smashed avocado on toast. So there's a bit of search engine optimization for and against there, I think. But that's cool. I'm so glad. And I'm sure Nicole would be thrilled to hear that too. All right, last one before we start getting into the questions from the community is, what's your random money splurge? And I've kind of given you a restriction here, no more than $50.
Yep. My partner will laugh at this so much if she listens, but I have a shameless splurge on like the little Asai packets that you can buy from the supermarket. They honestly cost about $10 for a pack of 4. So like it is quite expensive, but my at-home smoothie bowls are elite and I have them every single day, and it's a splurge that I'm happy to make because I figure if I was going to go out and buy an acai bowl, that's like $20 for one. So
do you mean something like this Sambazon?
Oh, no, they're like the pre-made ones. It's just the pure acai puree.
Oh, just the puree.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. So, okay. Cool.
But I reckon I spend about like minimum $30 a week on like my breakfast at home.
Wait, this is going to be, you're going to have to educate me here a bit. So the acai part of it is actually just that the gooey stuff, the soft stuff, not the whole bowl.
Yeah, the acai is a fruit.
Okay.
So it's like a type of berry. So, normally if you buy like a bag of frozen berries, they're like maybe $6. But this stuff's like, I know the details to a T. It's actually $9 for 400 grams.
$9 for 400 grams. So you could get at least 4. And then you'd have some dollars left over.
Yeah.
Wow. What an interesting thing. I did not in any way ever expected you would say something like that. So there you go. So acai packets.
Yeah, I love them.
Okay. I like it. I like it a lot. Well, that's a good little money splurge. So general advice disclaimer applies. If you haven't already heard it on the podcast, it goes something like this. We're about to get into your questions, and we don't know your needs, goals, or objectives. So any of the information that you do here on a Rask podcast, this one or any other, is general advice only. Because we don't know your needs, goals, or objectives, you should speak to a financial planner before you act on the information you hear in a podcast. Say like Tahli here, she's a financial planner. They can take into account all of those things, but also determine if something that you're investing in or some sort of financial product, we call it like a super fund, is right for your situation and your goals as well. Don't forget, you can read the Rask Group's Financial Services Guide, that's FSG, available at www.rask.com.au/FSG. Okay, so Tahli, instead, because this is your first Q&A style episode, I'm actually going to hand the reins over to you to be host, and then you can ask me questions and you can chime in as well as we go.
Cool. Beautiful. Can't wait. All right. Well, let's get straight into it. So the first question we have is from Perplexed. Mm-hmm. They've asked, hi, I haven't heard your podcast talk much about Asia ETFs specifically. I'm looking at investing in perhaps IAA or VAE, but I'm a little uncertain about committing to either. Can you please speak of your experience with Asia ETFs and maybe what Rask would personally invest in to follow an index investing style?
Sure. Yeah. So some of your financial advice clients that have come through Rask use Asian ETFs, broadly speaking. Most of the finance industry divide it up, don't they? We don't really think of it as Asia explicitly. Like we don't really think the same way about, say, USA. We think of like the USA as a distinct thing, but we don't think of the same thing when we build portfolios for people. But most of the time, the way we classify things is emerging markets, because most of the reason people want to invest in Asia is for long-term economic growth, like a BYD made in China, iPhone made in China. So you kind of want to get access to that. And we call those developing markets or emerging markets. And so you commonly see the phrase EM. We use one ETF in Rask Invest, which is available publicly. You can see that. It's called EMKT. And then another ETF that we use in our financial advice portfolios, which is basically the same thing, except for there's one difference. We will use the IEM ETF from iShares. This is not a personal recommendation, of course. It's just what we use. Basically, what we get with the IEM ETF is a blanket across all different parts of Asia, but throughout other parts of the world, emerging markets. It's important to understand, even if you're looking at Asian ETFs, they can be riskier. And by that, we mean they bounce up and down a lot more. There are periods where they don't perform as well as other markets. The future is obviously unknowable. And you need to be aware that by using one of those types of ETFs or any of these ETFs that are mentioned, IAA, these types of things, VAE, they are part of a diversified portfolio, in my opinion, Tahli. I don't know about you. Like just broadly speaking, but just be aware of what we call position sizing. So there are some people out there that will tell you that you should have a lot of your portfolio in these types of things. I disagree. And the reason that I disagree is the performance hasn't been there, but also they're much more volatile than, say, like a stereotypical US ETF or an Australian ETF or something like that. We do talk a lot about these on our Australian Investors podcast, for what it's worth, a lot, probably every 2 weeks. So jump onto that if you want more info. What would you add?
I think you've covered the essential aspects of it. It's probably worth just touching on when we say like being wary of position sizing. And again, not specific financial advice, but broadly speaking, what would that range look like?
I think for most people, like at the upper end, it's like 20%. Like that is very much at the upper end. Like that is even I've seen the reason why I use it at the upper end is I've seen some like robo-advisors and stuff that have that. And I'm like, that's kind of freaky to me.
20% makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. I typically see it like 5 to 10% range. And that would be spread across multiple ETFs or multiple managed funds, not just like one. I think that there's what looks good in a spreadsheet and there's what looks good in reality. So a lot of the people that are real strong advocates of like investing in China, investing in India and these types of places go, well, they're growing fast. Look at the economy. Everything says made in China, blah, 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 blah. But then they look at the stock market and they're like, why hasn't the stock market gone up as fast? Like we do that as professionals. We look at that. If you just took the basis of countries that grow fast are good investment countries, you would find in the past that you've had pretty bad results. Like the US has outperformed, Australia has outperformed, South Africa has outperformed. Even the UK over a long period of time has done really well. Why? What we believe is that what we found when we did this work in 2023 was that the countries that have the most stable financial and political system tend to do the best over the long term because those systems are set up to reward investors because they know that people take risk with money. Whereas in a lot of these developing countries, what happens, I've found, Tahli, is that the financial regulation system, property rights, all those types of things, obviously we know like communism just flat out does not work. That's been established. But like anytime there's like a lot of government intervention, people lose faith in their ability to invest in that country or that thing. And so over the generations, we've seen that those countries tend to not be as good investments. Now, I think places like India, China are going to get way better. So we do have some investments there, but I just want to make it clear that like keep diversified, be really sensible who you listen to, and what just because a stock market might look like it's growing faster, it's better value or whatever. Warren Buffett famously said the stock market is not the economy. Yeah. Cool.
Great. Yeah, nailed it. All right. Next question is from Jack. I am going to assume that is not his correct name for the purposes of our podcast. Jack has he's mentioned, I have been investing in the S&P 500 and the ASX 200 for roughly 2 years. I am treating my shares as long-term savings accounts, minimum 5 years. I want to invest for my retirement as well, currently aged 30. It is unusual to invest in the same stock. Oh, I think he means to say, it unusual to invest in the same stock, the S&P 500, with two different providers if each stock is for a different personal goal? Cheers.
Yeah, so first of all, there's two things I want to mention here at the top, and we've highlighted this. One, I like the idea of a long-term savings account because like investing should be treated as long-term savings. It's just invested. But the second thing is, poor old Jack here has given us a lot of personal information, which we do not necessarily need for the purposes of this podcast. So, Tahli, I might ask you to really generalize this question just to 1 or 2 points, and then I'll just respond on the fly. Like, what are the things that we need to know from this question?
So, basically, what we're looking at here is asking, is it weird or even wrong to invest in the same thing with two different ETF providers?
I'd say the answer is no. We see, I don't know about you. Have you ever owned two similar ETFs?
Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of people own like A200 from BetaShares, disclosure sponsors the show, and VAS from Vanguard.
Yeah.
Like side by side. And one of the reasons that you might be like, well, that's too much and overlap and blah, blah, blah. Because one of the reasons people end up like that is that they bought one of them and then they changed their mind down the line and they were like, I don't want to sell that because I'll pay capital gains tax.
Yeah. Guilty.
So people do that all the time and it's totally fair. So the key thing is that you look beneath what the ETF is and what are you actually getting. We call that overlap. The other thing is I went on a bit of a tangent when I was answering this question for myself on the train this morning, but I probably won't bore everyone to death with that detail. But, a few years ago, I used to think that Vanguard would solve everything, which I still think that they're amazing, but I think I've drastically underestimated everyone else in the ETF world and all the other providers, including who I just mentioned, who is a sponsor of the show, disclosure, BetaShares. Like those other ETF providers have grown really fast. And when you think about like, well, shouldn't most people just be like lowest fee ETFs? And yeah, they probably should, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that people want to invest in.
Yeah.
And, so for me, I kind of like the idea of having different investments with different ETF providers for whatever reason, just in case one of them changes strategy, increases fees, does something crazy in the future. And I'm like, oh, what the heck have I done?
Yeah.
Or one, has an administrative error or I don't know. I just like the idea of having different providers, but I don't think that like I would want more than two ETFs to do the same thing. Like, does that make sense?
There's a limit to where it's essentially like mitigating risk, and then it just becomes kind of like unnecessary overlap.
I think at the beginner end though, a lot of people, I don't know have you found this, that a lot of people don't understand that just by having a different ETF, they're not more diversified?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think a lot of people. Yeah, even in this question itself, we've got investing in the S&P 500 and the ASX 200. Like you are investing in very, very different things there. Yeah. The other aspect of it that I don't think we've really touched on too is like the mental benefit from having separate investments for separate goals.
Yeah.
And we talk about it a lot in the advice space that it's not just about what makes the most sense on paper or on a spreadsheet. If that works for you mentally and it's going to help you adhere to that long-term objective, then great.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, we did that the other day. I obviously won't say who, but I'm pretty sure we did that the other day where we had different discrete kind of portfolios for different people.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people in the community, I do this, by the way, like have different accounts for different strategies. Like I have different brokerage accounts for like my stocks versus this versus that. I still have my old ComSec account with some shares in it. Like it's not that I'm actively using it every day, but I don't mind it being over there. It's a bit of an administrative thing, but I don't really care. And I think that kind of, like you said, it works for some people in certain ways and not in others. And this is the whole thing, which is what makes finance so great, is it is personal finance. Yeah. So yeah, cool. Next question is a bit of a tricky one. I won't go too deep because it might scare some people away.
Cool. So the next question we've got is from Aristotle. So they've asked, hey guys, great podcast, super useful for me. Great. Got a question for Owen. I've started a little business, just figuring things out. Heard you are talking about some benefits of buying an electric vehicle for business. Mm-hmm. Can you do a short segment on how it's beneficial and how we can utilize any government schemes on electric vehicles for business or personal use?
Cool. This episode is going to go out in June because we're recording it in June 2025. So tax year ends at June 30th. So I own an EV. I bought a Tesla quite a few years ago, and obviously huge savings for anyone on electricity, like in terms of versus fuel consumption. Things just seem to be cheaper. There's no maintenance. There's no da-da-da-da. You just replace the tires. In fact, I took it back to Tesla and I was like, hey guys, it's making some weird squeaking noise with the brakes. And they're like, oh no, that's just because you haven't used the brakes enough. Because it's got regenerative brakes.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So it doesn't actually use its brakes. It just regenerates the engine. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, you just clean the brakes off, dust the brakes off, or just do something. And he's like, sent me this video. I'm like, oh, God damn it. But I got a $60 Uber voucher out of that because he was like, where do you want to go? I'm like, well, nowhere now, but thanks for the voucher. So I'm a big advocate of EVs from an environmental perspective, but also from a financial context perspective, because like I just think the days of combustion engines and filling up at the station and fuel station stuff, I just think that's completely done for anyone else other than like maybe at the moment tradies, but it's going to change in the next 2 or 3 years with some of these new utes that are coming. So the basic gist of this question is where this person's a business owner, but this in a similar way, but not the same, would apply to someone who works for a business but chooses to do something like novated leasing. I want to put it on record that as a general rule, I'm not like super positive on novated leasing.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, before the conversations that have been had in the office here over the last few weeks, I was, not a fan of novated leasing. Yeah.
So I'm generally, as a general rule, and I'm sorry for everyone, I'm not a fan of novated leasing, with the exception of electric vehicles because of all the amazing tax benefits. There's plenty of stuff in our community about this. If you just Google Rask Community Tesla, Rask Community EV, it will come up. So the big benefit of having an EV as a business owner, whether you're a sole trader, like a plumber, or like a small business owner, medium business owner, is this thing called fringe benefits tax. Traditionally, when you have a work vehicle, you have to determine how much of the vehicle was used for the business, purely business, and how much was used for your own personal use, like going to get the groceries from Woolies or going to the beach or doing whatever you want to do. Traditionally, anything that's personal use or private use, as the ATO calls it, can in no way be seen as like a pure business expense. So you have to introduce this concept called fringe benefits tax, which is a benefit that you get that you have to adjust for because it's a fringe benefit to you and you pay tax to adjust for the difference. And it's annoying as heck, and it is complicated, and there's whole different things that apply. With an EV, assuming some rules, that all goes out the window. It disappears. It just vanishes.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And so you can effectively, as a small business owner, have a fully electric vehicle that passes the luxury car tax, like it's below that threshold, which I just looked is actually below $91,000 for the current financial year, which is higher than when I bought it.
You were mentioning this yesterday, that it was about 60 odd K?
Yeah, you can get Yeah, and you can get pure EVs for way below that
Yeah.
now. So the limit's gone up, but the cost of electric vehicles is coming way down. So it's like a really interesting time to be doing this. But there was a change in April. You cannot use the EV subsidies anymore with hybrids. They have to be pure electric vehicles now, which is fine because like most people are going pure electric. They realize they're not scared of them anymore and it's like the future and it's what's already here. So this is the gist for business owners is that my interpretation of the ATO website, speak to your accountant, of course, is that you can use an electric vehicle for unlimited private use and there's no fringe benefits tax. There is very strict rules on this in the ATO website. Go and check it out. We love the ATO. We actually do because I think the ATO does a great job in Australia for what it's worth. Like people hate the ATO, but the ATO's job is just to do whatever the government tells it. It's not, the ATO just doesn't make shit up. So with this, what makes it so special is that in effect, a business owner could buy an electric vehicle and go, here, my partner, here's a beautiful car for you. Go and have fun. And if you think about that from a tax perspective, think of the benefits there. I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense to me.
It seems like one of those things that's too good to be true.
It does, and that's why I think it will change.
Yeah.
And it's already changed for hybrids, and I don't think people have much longer before everyone's like figuring out how good this is, and the government's like, stop. Because what the government, there was an AFR article about this like a few months ago, and what they found out was that obviously it's the wealthy people that know the tax rules and go and do this.
Yeah.
Like yobbos like me that run a business and are in finance, we're like, yeah, we'll do that. But like people that just go and buy their regular, petrol cars
have no idea.
Yeah. So, but that's okay for me, and hear me out, Tahli. Because if the government wants to save the environment, it cannot do it alone. If the government sends you a recycling bin, how many people just throw random plastics into their recycling bin? Literally everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the government sends you a nice little compost bin and says, don't put like meat scraps in this, how many people are going to listen to that? No one. So they basically said, well, let's just use the tax law to say, all right, we've got like 3 million small businesses. You guys spend money on like good environmental things. And all the people that were realized, and all the accountants that realized this, they were like, hey guys, go and spend money because the government's giving you this massive hall pass. Go and do it. And so I'm like championing this. I'm like, it's good for the environment. It's good for people's tax. Anyway, so that's where I'm at. And this is crazy. I was looking at this morning, Tahli. This is on the Tesla website. I'm sure like BYD and all those other ones have similar things. But even in the state of New South Wales, our good old friends up there, electric vehicles are permitted to drive in T2 and T3 transit lanes, regardless of the number of occupants, until 30 June 2025. So you can drive in the bus lane. I'm pretty sure that's what that means.
Unreal, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
just because you got an electric vehicle. Like, it's
it?
just a silly, stupid little thing. And I'm like, what?
That's amazing. Yeah, this is...
So I was like, of course, everyone wants you to drive electric vehicles. You may as well just do it. These are just like silly little things. Like these, you get $200 off here. Some of the states have like $3,000 for this, $2,000 for that car. Victoria scrapped it because we're broke. But like, there are so many cool things. If you just Google like electric vehicle subsidies, electric vehicle incentives, like what's this? This is a Powerwall from Tesla. Solar Victoria is offering an $8,800 interest-free loan to reduce the upfront cost of installing a battery.
Whoa. Yeah, see, like I've never heard of that. And that seems like a huge benefit. Yeah,
so I'm not telling everyone to go and buy Tesla, FYI. But you could just go and have a look around. And there's still a lot of like, range anxiety, they call it, Tahli, where you're like, will I run out of battery?
Yeah.
I have never thought about that since I got one because I got a charger at home. Imagine having your own little fuel station at home.
Are you doing long drives?
I did Canberra the other day.
Oh, yeah, of course. That was fine, wasn't it? Yeah,
there's charges every 100 Ks. Someone in our community was telling me the other day that you can drive across a Nullarbor. There's charges every 120 to 150 Ks.
Wow. And that's the longest drive anyone's ever going to do.
Yeah, I can't imagine this much more than that. Now, I don't think that this is like right for everyone. Like there's some like we went and looked at the BYD Shark over the weekend. So this is the Ute that is a hybrid. It runs like 80 kilometers. I'll say 100. It runs 80 kilometers electric only. And then the rest of it is petrol.
Wow.
right?
I've never seen this. This is
But
a beast.
It is a beast. It's huge. But it's basically a copy-paste Ford made in China with some electrics in the mix. But the thing is that with that, it doesn't qualify for any of the stuff that I just mentioned because that all lapsed in April.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So in net terms, everyone's situation is different, tax profile, blah, blah, blah. In net terms, you're going to pay roughly, by my quick calculation, somewhere between 30 and 50% more by having a non-EV car in whatever way you're doing your novated leasing loan type thing.
And that's for non-business owners as well, or solely business owners?
So novated leasing is for anyone.
Yeah.
Basically, if your employer is cool with it. The business owners, obviously you need a business. I don't know if I've said this in the finance podcast, but I had like this, the stars kind of aligned when I bought the Tesla ages ago. So they used to have instant asset write-off.
Yeah.
So you used to, if you were a business owner, even sole trader, contractor, you used to have this thing called instant asset write-off. You still got it 20 grand until the end of the year, the financial year, where you could have virtually unlimited write-off. And what that meant was, this is like a Schitt's Creek scene or something, where he's like, it's a tax write-off. And his dad's like, what do you mean? It's a write-off. He's like, it's not a write-off. This is at the Rose Apothecary for people that know that sitcom. So the thing that happened was I ordered a Tesla online, which is like $400, never driven one, never even sat in one in my life. I was just like, that's cool. Great. Everyone tells me it's amazing. Yeah, it was $400. I was like, I'll think about it later because it was like estimated to be like 4-month delivery. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll sort it all out later.
Yeah, future problem.
Yeah. Anyway, so because I realized all this thanks to Queenie Tan, Investor Queen, she told me about all this. I was like, holy moly. Okay. So I ordered it and you can't claim the deduction until the car is in your possession. That's the rule. So you have to have it, quote unquote, delivered in your possession. That's how you know that it has been, like, you're able to effectively do it from a tax perspective. So I was like, I ordered this in like the mid-June a few years ago, and I was like, there's no way that thing's coming before June 30th. It arrived on the 30th of June. So then I could claim a tax deduction effectively through the business for the whole amount of the car. And I got all these amazing EV subsidies. I was like, this is like pure luck.
Which year was this?
Like 2 years ago?
Yeah.
So I was like, I just claimed this is like a write-off. And all these EVs, and I've got no maintenance. I was just like mind blown. It was crazy. Like, it was crazy, Tahli.
Pretty amazing stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. We spent way long on this, but obviously I'm super passionate about it. And I realized over the weekend that everyone's been asking me about this, and I've never actually formally told people publicly what happened.
Yeah, I honestly think we need a full episode dedicated to this, especially given like how many conversations we've had just in the office around it. Like, it's really useful information that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah. All right, we've got 4 more questions on our official list. You can give me a timer of like 90-second answers to everyone. How about that?
Yeah. Great. Cool. Let's jump into the next one. So we've got a question from Sash Smash Mash. I don't know what that is a reference to, but I love it. I have $30,000 to invest for my 3 kids who are 3, 4, and 8 years of age. What is the best way to invest now and leave it for 20 years? ETFs or something else? So
without getting into the personal, we don't actually know who this person is, obviously, unless that's their official name, which I highly doubt that. So we've done a full tax overview for kids and how it works, because it does get a bit funny, whose name it's in, da-da-da-da-da. And James, one of the other advisors in our business, has done a full tax structure blog post / deep dive. Really easy to read, and it kind of breaks down what we mean by tax structures, quote unquote. But basically, kids can't legally hold shares in their like legal name. It has to be held on behalf of. So typically it's parents or in a trust or something like that. Absolutely amazing that someone would want to invest for their kids. I'll give you just a bit of a cheat code. If you go to our website, you look at the Rask Invest page, you can see which ETFs are inside there and what we've done, as well as the blog posts and all that sort of stuff. So go and check that out. Wonderful that you invest for kids. I think we've done emails on this in the past. Go and check it out. That's what I'd say. Cool.
Good stuff. Next question is from Bridge Builder.
Can I actually ask this of you?
Yeah.
So Bridge Builder says, "Hey Rask team, I'm currently an engineer with 5 years experience in the field and I'm looking to make a career change into finance. Namely, they want to go into funds management, which is more the investory side. But I wanted to ask you this question, given that you've done this recently. They say, given I have just completed my Masters of Applied Finance, I'd like to know what level of job I should be aiming at and the expected salary." Now, I'm going to ask you to do the financial planning world side because it's kind of similar, and I'll do the investing world side, which is also a lot of people want to do that too. So you go first. Financial planning side of this thing.
Yeah. So if we're looking at the financial planning career journey, there's really 5 key roles that you can have. And they all kind of obviously tier from one to another. So your starting entry point into advice would be, I mean, I haven't actually included it, but generally you've got an admin assistant, you know. I think that one speaks for itself, but if you're working more into advice specific, you're moving into what's called a client services manager, or sometimes it's called a CSO, so client service officer. And they're the ones that are essentially managing all the client admin, working with the various product providers, and basically just ensuring smooth onboarding and ongoing service. Typically, salary range for that might be between 60 and 80K.
Yeah, right.
Adjacent to that, you've got paraplanners. So I would say, paraplanners don't tend to follow the same sort of pathway. They typically, paraplanners love what they do and are happy to be career paraplanners. Obviously not always the case. But a paraplanner is more focused on writing and creating the advice document, which in financial planning world we call the statement of advice. And they do all the modeling and the research behind it. So they're like
more technical.
Yeah. So they do have a lot more technical knowledge, and they also ensure compliance in all areas with the documents that they create. Salary range for a paraplanner can vary quite significantly depending on experience because, like I said, some people will stay in that paraplanner role for their entire careers. So salary could range from, say, 70 right up to 100. Yeah. From your CSM or your CSO role, if you were wanting to take that next step up, you typically move into an advice associate role. And that is where you're kind of, I guess, shadowing your senior advisor. And kind of tagging along to client meetings and doing the pre-work and the post-work alongside the advisor. Typically when you're doing the associate role, you start undertaking what's called a professional year, which is a year of essentially mentoring and supervision to gradually start to take on some of that client-facing stuff one-on-one. So that's, typical salary might be 75 up to 100.
Yep.
The advisor role is the natural flow on from that. And that's where you are, in charge of providing advice to clients and maintaining and managing those relationships yourself. And then so I'd say, again, advisor salaries can really range. And that's where a lot of practices will start to weave in, a package where it might be like a profit share scheme, or maybe you have equity stakes in the business, or that's probably a bit later on. But typically I would say between 100 and 150 maybe.
Yeah.
And then your next step up from there is really the senior advisor role, which is where I guess you are dealing with more complex client relationships and scenarios, but you probably also start to spend a bit more time like on the business development side of things and the mentoring, rather than just that day-to-day client work. And then salary range, I'd say anywhere from 150 up to 200 really varies.
I've seen some advisors make a lot of money. Because they're really good at their jobs and clients just want to work with them.
But that's the advice side.
Yeah, cool. And if you are a technical person, obviously you've come from a professional background in this instance, like being engineering. There you can see how multiple parts of that world probably appeal. Like there's the modeling and the technical side, but then there's the soft skills that people would have to develop and the project management of those types of things. Regardless of what experience people come with, you still have to do a professional year like me, right? So you still have to do that under law. And that's good because you get, I would say for everyone to get the technical knowledge is really important. And so, yeah, I think that's this person would probably be coming in probably like if they have good experience, personal skills, knowledgeable, done the degree, if they were in the financial planning world, they'd be coming in at a pretty good salary.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we talk about funds management, which is the investing side of the world, these jobs are much, much harder because there's nowhere near as many of them. And that doesn't mean that they're better. It just means they're harder, and it's pretty cutthroat in that industry. The typical progression is you work in operations for a few years. If you're lucky, you get a junior analyst role, which you start researching investments. You go to analyst, you go to senior analyst, portfolio manager, and eventually to chief investment officer. There are other roles we're called investment specialist and distribution. In finance, we say distribution. What that is a sales role. I don't know why anyway, it should just be called sales.
It is strange, isn't it?
Yeah, or BDMs is the role there. But at the low end, you can be working for a pittance, because if you want the rights to work at one of these firms, they know that you want to work there. It could be 50 grand. You get into like analyst level role, you're talking anything from 75 to good analysts, 150 plus bonuses. You start to get into portfolio management roles, and it's like hundreds of thousands. Probably the low end is 100 to 150, but they're very, very rare roles. And normally when you go to those businesses and you're in that position, you have to be everything.
Yeah.
You're a super highly qualified, super charismatic, really good communicator. And hey, you need to be a really good investor too, which is really hard, as we know. So you have to bring clients in, you have to engage them, you have to be good at investing, lead a team. Like that's where you get like those big Hollywood type budgets and stuff like that. Eventually though, a lot of these roles do cross over. Like if you're a really good financial planner, obviously you're dealing with people's wealth. And I would say for most people, if I was to choose, Tahli, I would say most people should consider the financial planning world, even if they want to become investors.
I think it's a really effective way to build relationships in the industry as well.
Yeah.
Because as much as it can frustrate us at times, as a financial advisor, funds managers are on your back all the time to get your business. So if you're wanting to get a foot in the door, like it's a really effective way to start to build those connections. And
you're the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Okay. How about this? How about I'll go with the next question, then you answer the last question.
Yeah, great.
All right. You actually read this question out, and then I'll ask you the last question.
Beautiful. All right. Next question we've got here is from Golden Handcuffs. I work in the mining industry. No, I do not make TikTok videos. And pay just over 120K in tax. And I'm scared to invest everything, as everything I do increases my taxable income.
Yep.
Even paying extra in super is taxed at a higher rate. Can you please do an episode on Division 292? I think they mean 293.
293 is the original one. Yeah. So there's a lot of divisions getting thrown around at the moment. For retirees, it's Division 296. And for everyone in the working age, it's Division 293. We won't need to go into the full amount right now, but just in a general sense about tax, we did an episode on this 2 weeks ago. If you are an investor, and this is something I talk to my wife about a lot, Tahli, is get used to the idea you will never get a tax return. Like you will not get a refund ever in your life. You are going to be paying tax for the rest of your existence. And that is a privilege because you have money. If you earn a good salary, you pay more tax. That's the way our country works. And nothing you and I can do about it. So pay more tax. The only way you can deal with this is how do you mitigate it? And that's where we talk about this whole thing called structuring. Structuring is this idea of where are the investments held? So do I use a family trust, a company, an investment bond, my partner's name, my business? Like those are the different things you should be going through your head. So who owns or what owns the shares? Is it me as a person or my trust or my bond or whatever, my super fund? And then, just get used to paying tax. We've done a full session on super contributions and all this sort of stuff. Division 293 is basically when you earn a certain amount of money, your employer contributes a certain amount of money and you go over the cap. Probably don't need to go into it too much depth today. At this stage, you should be reaching out and getting advice, to be honest. you should get a tax advice or at least one of the or both tax advice, financial advice, because at this stage, setting up the right structures, even if you just get once-off advice, will be great. Because you need to know like your long-term trajectory before you go and set up different trusts and structures, because they cost money. Finally, for anyone listening, I'd always rather split a profit with the ATO than take the full amount of the loss.
Yeah. So true.
Yep.
We've got a very strange mentality around tax.
Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, like if you're paying tax, it means you're making money. It's a great thing. It's a good thing.
Yep. All right, last question. Cash me outside. That's the questioner named, Tahli. First time writer inner, longer time podcast listener. My financial advisor has suggested I get a wrap account, kind of like a chicken wrap, but a bit different. I get a wrap account instead of my current super account. Are financial advisors usually incentivized to move super investments into wrap accounts? Thanks, guys. Tahli.
Goddamn advisors.
Goddamn.
Firstly, I guess we should explain what a wrap account is. So essentially, it's just a fancy brokerage account. Yep. You've got in your notes that look shit. They're definitely...
Yeah.
They're
not Pearler like or BetaShares Direct. They don't look good.
Yeah, they typically aren't as tech savvy as your newer brokerage accounts.
Yeah.
But a lot of advisors will use a wrap account for their clients because it means that they can be listed as a registered advisor linked to that account, which gives them authority to act on the account on that client's behalf. Mm-hmm. In essence, that just means that we're creating greater efficiencies and we're actually able to do our jobs, which is to help you manage your money. Mm-hmm. In full disclosure, we use a wrap here with the Rask advice team as well. Mm-hmm. And the reason we've gone with the platform or the wrap that we've selected is because it allows us to manage the client portfolios at a reasonably low cost. It gives us that 24/7 access to their portfolios and their money, so we can make rebalances when we need to, mm-hmm. And set up the accounts on their behalf for them, which is a big one because doing that yourself is super clunky and a bit of a pain. But the reason we've selected that particular provider as well is because you can unlink your advisor and still have your money invested on the wrap exactly as it was when the advisor was linked. So that's the one thing I will say to this podcast listener is that just check in with that specific provider if your funds can stay active on there once the advisor is removed. Yeah. I think that's really important when it comes to like the longer term independence and empowerment piece is just knowing that, if you do make the decision at some point in time to remove the advisor, whether you just, you've done your time, you no longer see value in it, whatever it might be, you want to make sure that you're not cashed out immediately and needing to go and scramble and make another investment elsewhere. Because that's the big one, isn't it? Some of the quote unquote wraps. So if anyone's thinking about a wrap, maybe get the chicken wrap out of your mind. But if you're thinking about a wrap, just picture in your head brokerage account. That's kind of what it looks like, right? That is what it looks like. It's what it is. But the difference is that you can have everything in one place. So you could have some super in there, as this person's referred to. You can have managed funds. You can have ETFs, shares. You can even link other things like property investments. Like you can link things into it, which means that you kind of get this consolidated picture of your wealth. And the advisor can manage it for you. What Tahli is saying is what I really believe in, which is that if you no longer want to stay with your advisor, you shouldn't be disadvantaged. And that's why we work with a particular platform that allows us to say, or our clients to say, hey, Tahli, you've done a great job. I've got it from here. And that's cool too. Most of the time, hopefully they don't do that because they're like, I'll just let you guys keep doing it. It all seems pretty good. At the end of the day, many advisors are biased to this because it makes their business easier to manage. Yes, they can charge fees that kind of as part of your arrangement, but you have an entitlement to question all fees and what you want and how you want them. We're not
begrudging anyone from making money. Finance is a profession. Like everyone gets paid fees. It's just important you understand what they are and how they're paid. Most of the platforms now, if you get bigger balances like $1 million in your super and stuff like that, it starts to become cheaper to use some of the platforms than it does to actually stay in an industry super fund.
We actually had an interesting one not long ago. One of the advice recommendations we made last week was moving someone from an industry fund to a wrap. And it was, more cost effective to be on a wrap, which provided so much greater control, transparency, investment options. So I think, that mentality that it's going to be more expensive is no longer accurate.
Yeah. There's a whole thing about this, but in our business, we actually don't care we don't care if you use a wrap or not because our fees don't change. So we're just like, whatever suits you best. And, some people, what has been amazing is we've gone into this being like, most people don't want ongoing advice. They just want a once-off financial plan, some coaching to go with that, and Bob's your uncle. A lot of them have been like, no, this is like a 10-year commitment for me. I need you to be here next year.
Yeah, it's been surprising.
And we're like, we will be here, but we're just saying we don't want to lock you in. So just so you know, you have a choice. So just make sure you feel empowered is the end result here. We've had some great questions today. I'd love to do this again with you, Tahli. And, hopefully you stay in finance for forever because, you're a gem. People are already requesting you as an advisor, which is kind of cool. And if you want to get in contact with us via a question, you can jump into the community. It's 24/7, or you can send us a question via the link in your podcast player or YouTube description. Just select the one that says Ask a Question and Australian Finance Podcast. So many great questions here on everything. If you did write in a question, I feel like we could organize something for you for free, whether it's a Rask core, a course, or something else. Just write into us. Remember, it is the end of the tax year, so collect those receipts. Get in contact with your accountant. They might be overseas at the moment trying to get a bit of a holiday in before they go crazy again. But get in contact, be proactive about your tax, and reach out if you need anything. Tahli, this was heaps of fun, so thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.